Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 13 of the Vuelta, España. 171 kilometers, just under 110 miles in length. And it looks like a perfect stage for the sprinters if they can all work together and keep the brake under sides so that there's not much power on today's stage. Now, before the stage started, there was big news because Juan Ayuso from UAE Team Emirates, the Spanish rider, 5th on the general classification, just under 5 minutes. I want to say about 4:53, if I remember right, on the general classification. He gets a soft COVID positive. What does that mean? It means he's got some markers in there that he's either had COVID or is getting COVID, but it's so low right now, they're going to let him start. It's going to be a little bit of drama because Jesus Herrada went out of the Vuelta España with basically the same kind of markers, and they didn't let him stay in long enough to be able to read if his COVID positive was hard positive or soft positive like Juan Ayuso. So there's some guys out here that have already left the Vuelta España that are not so happy with seeing Juan Ayuso, the Spanish rider, being able to start today's stage. Now they will let him start and the stage begins. Once it does, cameras come on with about 110 kilometers to go, and there's 3 riders in this front group. Julius Vandenberg from EF Education, the first KOM wearer here at the Vuelta España on stage 2. We have Anders Okamika represented in the group from Burgos BH and Jan Bal from Euskaltel Euskadi. These guys got about a 2-minute gap on the peloton, being led behind from Bike Exchange, Cofidis, and of course Trek Segafredo. So there's 3 teams chasing. The gap's not very big, and it's 110 kilometers to go. Now, when the gap goes out to about 3 minutes with 50 kilometers to go, we're going to start seeing another sprint team get on the front in the form of Bora Hansgrohe, and then Albacete de Koenig will get on there. So now we got 5 sprint teams chasing 3 riders up front with only a 3-minute gap. That means for certain we're going to see a field sprint on today's stage. And if you missed today's stage, you don't need to go back and see the beginning of this part because it was a sleeper throughout the whole stage. But you do want to tune into the finish because it was a magical sprint finish at the end of today's stage. Now, the big obstacle left when we're talking about the finish of the stage is going to be the final climb. Not necessarily a climb, but 4 or 5% all the way from about 800 meters up to the top, and some good stiff bumps that are happening from 10, 15 kilometers out, and then from 5 and 3, it starts getting really interesting in the finish. Now, one thing if you're a sprinter team, hopefully you got a sprinter that can climb a little bit like Mads Pedersen. Danny Van Poppel's pretty good on these type of finishes. Brian Coquard is a rider you always have to pay attention to. UAE Team Emirates, kind of up in the air. Pascal Ackermann hasn't shown fantastic form in the sprints, but Milano, his lead-out specialist, has done amazing jobs getting all the way into the finish and could do something interesting on a slight uphill finish like this. Keep in mind, when we start going uphill in the sprint finishes, things happen just a little bit slower, so there's a little bit more time to figure out, if you're one of the main sprinters in the peloton, to figure out what wheel you have to follow. You don't have to do such snap decisions. They have to be fast, but when we're talking about the last 3 sprints, there's 2 stages, one early, stage 2, and 3 from Sam Bennett, and of course, Caden Groves win just a couple stages ago. When you're talking about finishes like that, at those speeds that are coming to the line at 60 kilometers an hour, you have to make incredibly fast decisions. Today's finish is a little bit different though, and could mix in some guys. We're talking like Primoz Roglic. We know he likes these uphill finishes, but it's not quite that steep, so will Jumbo-Visma throw into work. With 20 kilometers to go, it's Trek Segafredo on the front, and they want to bring this group back because the sprint points line competition's coming up at just under 15K. Now 15K shows up, and the time gap's about 15 seconds, so Trek Segafredo don't quite have these 3 riders brought back. Now up front, we see the 3 riders, and it's going to be Juan Bo from Euskaltel Euskadi first across the line. And back in the peloton, they're going to give the 4th place position here to Mads Pedersen, who doesn't have to fight that hard. Now we'll fast forward up to about 9 kilometers to go, and we'll see as the road widens. Look at the peloton there. They're 20 wide and only 4 deep, so everybody's interested in keeping their GC guys out of trouble here on today's stage 13 or helping their sprinter win the stage. But it's really rare when you see it 20, 30 wide, whatever that number is, and only about 4 deep. So you know it's nervous in the peloton, and they're going full gas into this final finishing town here that'll decide who's going to win stage 13 of the Vuelta España. With 3 kilometers to go, we look on the left side of the road is Team Ineos. They're lined up with about 5 riders there. Trek Segafredo's got some help up there for Mads Pedersen as he's got his teammates wrapped around him. And then the red race leader's jersey here, Remco Evenepoel, he's keeping himself out of trouble as we're come under 3 kilometers to go. 2.7 kilometers to go. It's Movistar going to the front. They got two riders going 100%. Not certain their MO here because we're under 3 kilometers to go, so we're at a safe place. If there's any kind of crashes or accidents, I assume they're going to get the same time, even though it's still a slight uphill finish to today's stage. But either way, Movistar riding on the front, and they're doing a stellar job with just 2 riders up there. We look behind, and we got all the sprinters lined up there. Albacin de Koenig's in the picture. Trek Segafredo with Mads Pedersen's there. Remco Evenepoel, he's starting to drop back now and getting lost from the front of the group because he wants to keep safe and out of trouble on today's stage 13. Now, all of a sudden, with 1.5 kilometers to go, this is when we start seeing the sprint teams come to the front because it's Albacin de Koenig taking over the lead at 1.5K to go. They got their guys all lined up. 4 riders, 3 at least, maybe 4 at the front, and then Tim Miller just behind his lead-out guys. They're not going to be on the front for very long because this group wasn't successfully strong enough to hold off what's happening on the right side of the road because it's Jumbo-Visma that's coming full gas up the right side of the road. 2 riders in front of Primoz Roglic. One is Mike Teunissen sitting second wheel, and then Jumbo-Visma's got the full gas. As they're passing by the Albacin de Koenig train, we'll see all the Albacin de Koenig guys look over to the right side. They know what's happening. They don't have enough power on the left, so they're going to move to the right side to get on Jumbo-Visma. Now we start seeing teams go to work. When we look there at the picture, it's Jumbo-Visma in front. Albacin de Koenig's lined up there. UAE Team Emirates is in the picture. Mads Pedersen's got some help in the form of Alex Kirsch. And Alex Kirsch all the time is looking out for Mads Pedersen. Seen him many times look back over his right shoulder, always making sure that Mads Pedersen's there. Now at a crucial moment in time when they got to start moving up to the front, Alex Kirsch starts moving over to the left side of the road and accelerating as we start seeing the Bahrain victorious rider drop back from the front of the group. With that in mind, Alex Kirsch takes Mads Pedersen all the way up to behind the duel of the UAE Team Emirates rider there because Pascal Ackermann's there and Milano's lined up there. With that in mind, now we got to remember, coming up at 900 meters is the first right turn coming up. That's going to be a crucial moment if you want a shot at winning stage 13 of the Vuelta a España. 1 kilometer to go. We're going to see Alex Kirsch. He's just barely in the picture there. We'll see the motorcycle arm as he raises it. It's Alex Kirsch just under the armpit there of the motorcycle in the picture frame, and he's sprinting 100% because Jumbo-Visma's been sprinting all the way since they took the front, trying to get into this last right-hand turn with 1 kilometer to go, and then the turn starts at 900 meters. Now, Jumbo-Visma's flown into this 900-meter turn, and as we drift further back, we'll see the picture there with Mads Pedersen sitting just behind the UAE Team Emirates rider, but he's getting pinched off a little bit because up front was Davide Chimolai from Cofidis that was helping Brian Coquard out to put him in perfect position to start this right-hand turn with 900 meters to go. Brian Coquard comes back and pinches off Mads Pedersen just a little bit. So when we come out of this final right turn here, all of a sudden Mads Pedersen is 1 more spot back from the duel up front of the UAE Team Emirates, and now he's slotted in behind McKay. Now up front, we'll see Teunissen is throwing down 100%. Got a gap on Primoz Roglic. This is pretty rare. This is how we know Primoz Roglic is still not 100% on form, because at a moment in time right here with about 800 meters to go coming out of this right-hand turn, there with Mike Teunissen throwing in that acceleration, Primoz Roglic's job was to stay right there on his lead-out teammate's wheel all the way into the finish of today's stage. Instead, Primoz Roglic is suffering trying to close the gap. He will close it, but then we're going to start seeing a shakeup in the front because now Bora Hansgrohe is coming to the front. Just before that, though, we look onto the right side of the picture when we came out of that turn, and it was Mads Pedersen that started that turn on the left, now found his way to the right side of the road, and as the Bora Hansgrohe rider got to the front, UAE team members started drifting out with Milano to the left. Mads Pedersen went from the right side up to the left, and now he's right up there with the Bora Hansgrohe on the front. Mads Pedersen, Pascal Ackermann, Roglic is there, Brian Coquard's there, Van Poppel's just on the left side of the road. 400 meters to go. It's 3 wide at the front. It's Mads Pedersen, Pascal Ackermann all the way on the left, and on the right side, Ryan Mullen from Bora Hansgrohe. We look behind them, and it's Danny Van Poppel's lined up back there. Brian Coquard's just behind the front riders up top there with the 3 leaders. And as we start with 350 meters to go, this is when we're going to see a big attack from UAE Team Emirates. Pascal Ackermann, he wants to go into this final hard left-hand turn to the finish. And as he goes in, he takes front position, starts his sprint as it starts to come out, looks back to the left under his shoulder. He realizes that he's got the sprinter Mads Pedersen from Trek Segafredo on his wheel. but look further back, and guess what? It's Quentin Pasher from FDJ that's opening up the gap. He can't close it. We look further back from Quentin Pasher, and it's Brian Cocard Cofidis. He's about 7th, 8th spot back with a gap in front of him. Now up front, Pascal Ackermann decides he's going 100% in from about 300 meters to go. He starts his acceleration, moves all the way over to the left side of the road. About 100 meters to go, we're going to see it's Mads Pedersen coming up to the side there of Pascal Ackermann from UAE Team Emirates as his legs are starting to fall apart. Come into the final left, slight bend there to the finish line, and coming out of the picture with about 75-50 meters to go, it's Mads Pedersen with the lead. Just behind that, we're going to look and see it's Brian Cocard that's catching the wheel and starting to pass the wheel of Pascal Ackermann from UAE Team Emirates. Now we'll see Mads Pedersen do another look back over his shoulder. He knows he's got the gap, and he's going to win stage 13 of the Tour of Spain here for Trek Segafredo and pad some more points on the sprint competition. Behind him for second place, Brian Cocard, who came way back from 300 meters to go out of that final left turn to the finish of today's stage, probably 7th, 8th position, and has found his way past Pascal Ackermann to get second on the stage. Pascal Ackermann, UAE Team Emirates, who hasn't shown the best sprinting form throughout this year's Vuelta, manages to round out the podium for third. Big, impressive sprint from 350 meters to go from Pascal Ackermann. But with Mads Pedersen on his wheel, he was taking him all the way to the line. And Mads Pedersen, with this victory here at the Vuelta a España, let me remind you guys, he won a stage at the Tour de France, stage 13 of the Tour de France, stage 13 of the Vuelta a España, to do back-to-back Grand Tour sprint victory wins here at the Grand Tours of the 2022 season. Now, when we look at that stage 13 of the Tour de France, completely different than what we see here at this Vuelta a España. Vuelta a España is winning against the best sprinters here in the Tour of Spain. At the Tour de France, he was in that big break with 7 riders, I believe it was, with Stefan Kuhn there, Fred Wright was there, and Filippo Ganna was there. Mads Pedersen had some help from his teammate Quinn Simmons that day doing big pulls as they were holding off the Lotto Soudal train throughout that whole Tour de France. And then Mads Pedersen from about, I want to say 10 or 14 kilometers out, he started playing attacks there, and that split that group in half. And Fred Wright did some big monster pulls all the way in the finish to help Mads Pedersen win that stage 13. But when you look at this rider and you dissect him closely, it's amazing the season he's had. He's won uphill sprint finishes at the beginning of the season in a Tour de Bessèges. And then, of course, he's got classic wins on his resume, Ghent-Wevelgem. He's the Road World Champion from 2019. And when he won the Worlds in 2019, I thought, okay, this is a good rider. He's at the front often, but he's not very dominant. Now you see this 2022 season for Mads Pedersen. He is becoming that Peter Sagan-ish type rider where he has a lot of speed. He can win the uphill finishes. He can win the classic wins like we see with his Road World Championships and his Ghent-Wevelgem in 2020. And then this year he has just under 10 victories in the 2022 season, but very dominant and done in different styles, Peter Sagan-ish. So he's gone a whole nother level here in 2022 to be able to win a stage at the Tour de France from a breakaway of 7, and then here on stage 13, winning against the sprinters all here at the Vuelta a España. Now, it's a slight uphill, like I said, 4-5% for 800 meters, so it's a little bit different than a full flat sprint. But like I said, in my mind at this point in time, I'm seeing Mads Pedersen evolve into that Peter Sagan-ish type rider. Now, when we're talking about the general classification here on stage 13, nothing changed, so you don't have to worry about that. But we do got to start thinking about the stages coming up for tomorrow's Saturday and Sunday stage here at the Vuelta a España, because we're going into the Sierra Nevada climbs, and we got great stages. Should be big GC battles. We know Quick Step are down 2 riders here at the Vuelta a España. Remco Evenepoel, though, is on amazing form, and I'm going to say it right here that I think he's the type of rider now and turning into a Tadej Pogačar-ish rider where he can start winning Grand Tours, he can win Classics, we already know with his LBL victory earlier in the season, and he can win the week-long stage races. So with this improvement in form since the since the Classic of San Sebastian won just a few weeks ago before the Vuelta started, his form has gone to another level, and now we got to start looking forward to all these mountain stages with Remco Evenepoel, because if his form can continue through these final 2 weekends of racing here at the Vuelta España, we got to start putting them on the same page and the same markers as Tadej Pogačar, Primoz Roglic when he's healthy, and Jonas Vingegaard, along with some other classic riders like this Belgium compatriot, Wout van Aert. If he can get through this Vuelta España looking with this kind of form that he has, he's going to be up there with one of the legends of the sport going further, especially when we're talking about next season and we'll get around to the Tour de France. Hope you guys like my take here on stage 13. It was a bit of a sleeper, but trust me, it's worth going back and watching the sprint finish. Really a fantastic job done by Davide Cimolai from Cofidis, looking after Brian Cocard throughout all the way to finish, going into that last hard right-hand turn with 900 meters to go, and Alex Kirsch. So if you get a time, you go back, you focus on those 2 riders, the way those 2 Super Domestique lead-out sprinters, guys, did for their leaders here at stage 13 were remarkable. So get a chance, go back, pay attention to those guys, like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next edition of The Butterfly Effect.